Greetings, Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. That's a very leveling delivery, and in some ways good and in some ways bad, because it's like traveling through an isotherm if you're diving, or from a degree of focus from the introduction that comes into a train of thought that is still coming from So follow along here. These are I'm reading through notes, and it comes from hollow claims of legitimacy by saying our folklore is better than your folklore, when you can and must go beyond folklore to theory, to truly claim a valid distinction of value. Now, that's my point of view, but not necessarily yours. If only I could stay wrapped in a world of Pilates as folklore and as word of mouth, without an explanation, without having a question about why it is what it is, because none of that matters. The whole thing is about the culture of the folklore. Hollow claims of legitimacy by saying our folklore is better than your folklore. It seems so crazy to try to do that, but maybe that's what's preferable. But for a viewer of mine, when it's better than your folklore, when you can and must, must is my point, is that humanity's awareness, as it turns its eye towards what is it that makes it what it is, even though it may be a small contingent of the participants, to me, the discovery is in hearing words that make sense and then finding sensation in the words, so that the words really reinforce the sensation rather than the other way around. So I thought my title for number one was going to be Really? Because embarrassing was the first word that came to mind, as in the emperor's clothing, as though really you're coming from a place where your folklore is better than their folklore, as though that comes close to or encompasses what the explanation does, which it doesn't, because it can't. So in terms of points of view and culture, and recognizing that the culture is trying to seek distinction within themselves based on their closer connection to Joe, without taking it beyond word of mouth, which is the realm of folklore. Know the difference between folklore and theory. Folklore is word of mouth, knowledge passed down from one generation to the other, and theory is knowledge passed down from one generation that is an explanation of what it is, to where the knowledge is what it is, regardless of how well or how badly you pass it down. Your importance in the culture is less in theory and more so in folklore. And quite understandably so, I guess. But to survive, what I would want you to know is that the point of view of folklore is that is the only thing that can be. There is no explaining Pilates. That's where I came in and talked about Pilates, the assumption, the presumption that Pilates is unknowable. It's a very subtle presumption that Pilates is unknowable and that really the only essence or the highest value can only be delivered by the aristocratic culture of the folklore that exists. Maybe that's all true. I needed to know why. And to know why, I sort of had to figure out what it was. And the why became the experience. And everything after the experience is an attempt to control the experience. From a point of view of folklore, it can only be that way and will always be that way. So just recognizing that if this is the common knowledge of how Pilates is perceived and viewed and understood, and that it is, in my opinion, it's primarily folklore. It's word of mouth from generation to generation, without an explanation of why, because nobody hasn't really done it yet until me. I think others will. I hope their definitions are better than mine, and then I'll use their definitions. I'm just coming from the place that Pilates can be defined, that has an essence of its own, and that it's in the experience of that essence that draws the wave of passion towards it. And therefore all the money behind it, affording you the opportunity of surfing on this wave, because you're not only within the folklore of it and pursuit and presentation of it through folklore, and not through some other modality or prism, like physical therapy, or physiology, or anatomy. Pilates has an essence of its own, and my best attempt to define that is the definition of Pilates in MMP, Michael Miller Pilates. And MMP defines Pilates as uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement. 3 parts. Uniform eccentric loading. Uniform because of number 2, contrology develops the body uniformly. Eccentric because Joe writes about coming out from the center. Loading because in the mat progression of exercises, you're constantly taking on more load of your own body in space. Gets heavier. Flowing through because in performance of the mat, it's performed without stopping. Meant to be done that way. Flow is the key part of it. And then progressive patterns of movement. Patterns of movement being flexion and extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion. All of that comes from the mat sequence, the mat choreography. I didn't make it up. It's not, my definition is only a reflection of what is there in the ideal that can lead you toward an understanding of that ideal or that structure in order to guide you in recognizing it as a language that you speak then as a language as a Pilates instructor or student. So I guess I'll save what's left of my voice for Facebook. When you recognize the major culture of folklore as for something that is definable and a sense of difference to having an explanation of Pilates for what it is, regardless of anybody else, life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Connect the dots. See the picture that the dots reveal and allow the connecting of the dots to empower you in your pursuit of doing Pilates. And there, beyond that, to your helping others pursue the doing of Pilates. Then add 2 and 2. Columbus, Aretha Franklin. Direct your thinking. Geist.